My ex-husband and I divorced due to my mother-in-law's bullying. It happened less than a year into our marriage. We were colleagues at work and had a normal office romance, which smoothly led to marriage. The only abnormal thing was my mother-in-law. From the start of our marriage, she, doting on her only son, perceived me as an enemy. We had a shotgun wedding, which isn't so unusual now, but she yelled at me, how shameful to do such things before marriage. You're like a cat in heat. I wasn't solely responsible for that. I was shocked by such a reaction at our first meeting, and it seemed unlikely that we would ever get along. It was incredibly rude. I expected my husband to firmly say something to his mother, but he just pacified her, saying, "Mom, I can't stay single forever." My mother-in-law muttered, "But, Michael, a woman who gets pregnant before marriage will definitely cheat." Again, I wasn't the only one who made the baby. Frustrated, I thought I had to be the adult and remained silent. That's ridiculous. Jennifer is head over heels in love with me. Why didn't he deny it properly? My husband's reaction to the terrible accusation that I would cheat even before our marriage was absurd. And, as I keep saying, I wasn't the only one who made the baby. Why should I be the only one blamed? My husband was still trying to calm his mother, but I had lost all interest in listening to her. What a terrible mother-in-law. But I had my husband's baby in my belly, so I couldn't just leave. This was how my short married life began. Before our marriage, my husband lived at home. We agreed to live together after the wedding. However, my mother-in-law made a fuss, saying, "What are you talking about? Michael's home is here." "All right, if that's what you say, Mom." My husband easily changed our plans and decided we would live together, without even asking for my consent. Is he such a mama's boy? I thought he was kind, but he just lacked initiative. He was completely under his mother's thumb, and worst of all, he ignored her bullying me. For instance, right after we started living together. After finishing work and household chores, I was about to take the bath, running the hot water. When I opened the bathroom door, something was off. I checked the temperature with my hand. What is this? Cold water. My mother-in-law had deliberately replaced the hot water with cold. It was winter, and the bathroom felt chilly, so I noticed right away, but it was subtly infuriating. What a waste of water, and I was pregnant. What if something happened to the baby in my belly? Even if she resented me for taking her son, the baby was still her beloved son's child. I was disappointed and scared of her blatant hostility. From then on, whenever she saw me, she'd say, "Why don't you go back to your parents' house?" And never come back. Or, "What on earth did my Michael see in you?" Hearing this day after day, I grew increasingly tired. At first, I tried to stay positive, thinking, boys are their mother's little lovers, right? She just hasn't let go yet. She'll come to accept me eventually. But my mother-in-law never changed, and my husband didn't help. Why did I have to endure this alone? I cried in secret many times. 2 months passed, and a critical incident occurred. Just before I was about to go on maternity leave, I had to work overtime temporarily to adjust and hand over my work. That day, I was going to be home after 8 p.m. "I won't be able to make dinner tonight, sorry." When I texted my husband, he replied, "Okay." So, I stayed late at work. Despite my efforts to finish work quickly and my exhaustion from being pregnant, when I returned home, I noticed a delicious smell. Michael was alone in the living room, as his mother had already retired to her room. "I'm home. Did you cook something, honey? Welcome back." No, it was Mom who cooked everything. It was delicious. Hearing my husband speak so cheerfully, I went to the kitchen to find something to eat. But no matter how much I searched, there was nothing. There were dirty dishes for two and empty pots and pans, but no food. "Isn't there anything for me?" When I asked my husband, he answered indifferently, "Seems like there isn't." Why not? Maybe because Mom didn't cook it. What? I always cook for her, don't I? Why? Since we moved in, I had been preparing breakfast and dinner, including for my mother-in-law. She would eat it, complaining about the taste being too strong or too mild. She's upset, claiming a daughter-in-law has no right to come home later than her husband because of work. She also said you're a failure as a wife for not having any prepared meals. My husband almost blamed me. Isn't that a bit harsh? It was predictable that my mother-in-law wouldn't cook just for me, given her past behavior. She had always been confrontational from the beginning. The problem was my husband. Did he not think anything of it? Huh? Think what? Apparently, he didn't. Weren't you going to prepare something for me? Why should I? Do I really need to explain? Your wife comes home tired and there's no dinner ready? I believe marriage requires effort from both sides. Why do I have to be the only one making sacrifices? Well, it's your fault for coming home late. If you don't like it, come home earlier and cook. Fine, whatever. My husband was too self-centered to reason with. We both worked at the same company and earned almost the same salary. Why should I be the only one doing household chores and working? It would be nice if he cooked once in a while. Like mother-in-law, like son. I don't think either of them will ever change. I decided to divorce. I planned to go back to my parents' house for the birth, so I just stayed there. My parents were furious when they heard the story. My father said, "You don't ever have to go back there." We sent our only daughter off with tears, not for a man like that. We can't give our precious daughter and grandchild to him. When I called my husband to inform him I had arrived at my parents' house, I told him, I want a divorce. He hesitated at first, but soon agreed, saying, "Mom says it's better to divorce." Even then, he was under his mother's thumb. I was astounded, but I still felt guilty about taking the child away from him and raising our child without a father. So when our son was born, I texted him, "Our son is born," with a photo, but he ignored it. After a while, he replied, "Mom says we don't need custody, so you don't have to send photos." Unbelievable. No love for his son, no gratitude for a newborn. I regretted ever loving this man. I can't even remember why I married him. In the end, we settled on no alimony, but he agreed to pay $200 a month in child support. However, he only transferred the money for the first 6 months. Honestly, even though I'm on parental leave now, I'll have a decent income once I return to full-time work. I can send my son to college without living extravagantly. The thought of contacting my ex-husband just for the $200 monthly child support is unpleasant. After waiting about 3 months and confirming that the payments had completely stopped, I couldn't believe he would forget to pay such a small amount. Reluctantly, I contacted my ex-husband. "Hello, about the child support." As I started talking, my ex-husband said, "I've been waiting for your call. Can we meet so I can give it to you directly?" I never thought he would deliberately not pay the child support to make me contact him. "If you want to see your son, maybe on the weekend." I thought he wanted to see our son, but he shockingly suggested, "No, just the two of us, how about staying somewhere overnight?" Stay overnight somewhere? I'm with a son not yet a year old? What on earth was he thinking? Completely absurd. You left me not because you hated me, but because of Mom, right? So, if we meet outside, it should be fine. His idea was just creepy. His mother's bullying was one reason, but if that was all, we could have lived separately. I divorced him because he was utterly unreliable and I lost all affection for him. I never thought he could be this delusional. Why didn't I see his red flags before? No way. Just transfer the child support. I said just that and hung up, then blocked his number. Even if he doesn't transfer the money again, I don't want to call him. I decided to earn the $200 a month myself. After returning from parental leave, I got transferred to a branch office so I wouldn't have to see my ex-husband at the same company. And I worked hard to raise my son. I think it was about 7 years after the divorce. I received a call from an unknown number. Thinking it was work, I answered, and it was my ex-husband. "Hey, we divorced because of my mom, right? She's been hospitalized. Won't you come back?" No. You're wrong. We divorced because I couldn't handle you, not just your mother. Don't call me ever again. I hung up and quickly blocked that number too. My ex-husband's cluelessness was astounding. I felt sure that divorcing him was the right decision. Years passed, and it must have been about 10 years since the divorce. I had almost forgotten about my ex-husband when an unknown number called. I hadn't changed my phone number since it was also for work. I briefly thought of my ex-husband but figured it was fine since I had blocked him. To my surprise, it was my ex-husband, calling to say, "My mom passed away. Will you come to the funeral?" I'm sorry to hear that, but I can't attend the funeral. Why should I go to the funeral of someone who tormented me? It was incomprehensible. Why not? Mom is gone now. We're getting back together, so you should come. The relatives should meet you at this opportunity. My ex-husband kept making assumptions, but I cut him off, saying, "No, no, no. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Listen, I absolutely won't attend the funeral, and there's no chance of us getting back together, even if the world turns upside down." I hung up and, of course, blocked this number too. I considered sending a condolence card as a mature gesture and consulted my mother, but my father, overhearing, strongly opposed it, saying, "Absolutely not." So, I did nothing, and about a week passed. Suddenly, my ex-husband showed up at my house. It was our first encounter in 10 years. "It's been a while, Jennifer. I've come to pick you up." He even brought a bouquet, as if trying to be polite. No, I refuse. I was scared because the conversation was just not getting through to him. Fortunately, my son was not home as he was at soccer club practice. "We have a lot to catch up on, let's have some tea." My ex-husband tried to enter the house uninvited, but I had no intention of letting him in. "Please leave." "What's this, Jennifer, a pushy salesperson?" As my ex-husband and I argued at the entrance, my father appeared. "Michael, how dare you step foot on our threshold? Get out of here." Feeling stronger with my father's support, I firmly told my ex-husband, "We're divorced, and we are strangers now. There's no picking up here, this is my home. I absolutely don't want to get back together with you. Then, how about we start over as lovers? Things were good when we were dating, right?" "No, it's physically impossible for me now." My ex-husband was persistent, but the situation was completely different from back then. "Look, when we were married, you never protected me from your mother and never did anything for me. After the divorce, you didn't pay child support and never visited your son. How could you possibly think I would get back with you? I can't understand your thought process at all. Leave before I call the police." I thought that would be enough, but then my ex-husband said after a pause, "Then who will take care of me?" "What?" My father and I exchanged glances, utterly baffled. "It's my care. Mom's gone now, so you should do it. And it's been a while since we've been intimate at night." He seemed a bit embarrassed towards the end. I felt my skin crawl. Realizing how truly creepy it was, I was speechless. Seeing me silent, my father got angry. "Don't joke around. What do you think my daughter is?" "Please don't get angry, Dad," my ex-husband said nervously. "Enough. I don't want to be called a dad by someone like you. We're strangers. This is too disgusting to talk about." "Get out," my father exclaimed. "No, I came to pick up my wife." My ex-husband stubbornly insisted. Then, the sound of a police car siren began to be heard. A patrol car approached rapidly and stopped abruptly in front of our house. The neighbors started to gather, wondering what was happening. "You see, Jennifer, since we're getting nowhere, I called the police," my mother said, appearing from inside with a phone in her hand. "Good job," my father exclaimed with joy. The police officers took my ex-husband away, and I felt a huge sense of relief. Later, I hired a lawyer. We obtained a restraining order against my ex-husband from the court. It's best to keep someone so incomprehensibly irrational at a distance. My ex-husband's actions even became known at his company, and he was transferred to a remote island in the spring personnel changes. Apparently, a company personnel officer lived in our neighborhood and reported his behavior to the HR department. My parents' house was due for rebuilding, and we decided to move to an area with a strong soccer club for my son. This would completely sever our ties with my ex-husband. My son, who has grown up without his father, is cherished many times over by my parents and me. He's growing up healthy and robust. We're all looking forward to watching his next soccer match as a family.